Welcome to the age of SaaS, where churn, lifetime value, and cost to acquire are top of mind, and acronyms like MRR, ARR, and ACV are being tossed around like a beach ball at a concert. So how do SaaS leaders motivate, measure, and maintain momentum? We're picking them up on their way to SaaS North and asking them the questions you want to know in Leaders in Lyfts Getting Lattes.
So welcome to the next in our series of Leaders in Lyfts Getting Lattes. So we're here with Mallorie Brodie, who's a co-founder of Bridgit. And we'll just thank as well our supporters for this event, Lyft, of course, and our awesome driver, Kareem, who's with us again, and Klipfolio, Stratford managers, and SaaS North. So it's a pleasure to be here. And as I mentioned, my guest is Mallorie, who originally grew up in Ottawa.
I did. This is my hometown, so happy to be back.
Awesome. And back for SaaS North, where you were moderating a panel this morning.
Yes, I was.
Can you just tell us a little bit about Bridgit? What does it do? What do you do? And how did you get the idea for this?
Yeah, so Bridgit's been around for about 6 years now. Launched as part of the Next 36 program, which was an accelerator program in Toronto. And so my business partner met the first night of that program and realized that we both had this background in construction. So my grandfather actually had a demolition company in Ottawa, and my great-grandfather had a steel company here, so a lot of the city grates will still say Zagerman Steel on them. And her grandfather also had a construction company in Winnipeg. So we had this whole family background.
Cool.
We didn't know the specific needs of the industry, but we took it upon ourselves to just show up on project sites. We called it crane hunting, and we would walk around and just start asking questions about different problems they were having. And that led us to our first product, which was for issue tracking on site, so a quick mobile app to help them record any construction defect. And then launched our second product earlier this year, which is for workforce planning and construction. That's called Bridgit Bench.
Okay.
So we're 50 people, have raised about $11 million in capital, and have the two products now.
That's like amazing and incredible. And I mean, I have to ask, did people take you seriously at the beginning? As you're out crane hunting, I mean, I read about this in your mom's car, like early on.
Yep.
Did people take you seriously, or was that an uphill battle?
So showing up in the old Sebring convertible certainly wasn't, it wasn't helpful in building credibility.
Oh, no.
But then as soon as we walked on site, everyone had their F-150s all lined up on the job site.
Yeah.
And we walked on site, and we knew a lot of the terms from Lauren's time, my business partner. She had spent time on site.
Great name, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. And, in about 13 different states across the U.S., she had worked on site. So she knew all of the terminology. Both of us, again, had, grandfathers in the space. And so as soon as we spoke with them for a few minutes and, made sure that they knew we were serious about this business, then they realized we were just there to help. And I think the thing that we did was that we really just listened to what their problems were. So we weren't trying to tell them that we had some solution to fix their world. It was just very research-based, just trying to understand what their day-to-day looked like.
Cool.
And people like to talk about their problems at the end of the day. So they sort of spilled the beans on everything that was frustrating, and then we could go back to them with our ideas eventually of how we could solve that once that trust was built. So it was actually, I think, a lot faster and a lot easier than you would maybe expect with two young women just walking onto a job site. So
that's fantastic. I would just love to be there for that minute where they realize, oh, these ladies know what they're talking about. Like, that's got to be great.
Yeah, the coffee and donuts help too.
Oh, yeah, smart. Always bribe with food. When did you really know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
So I think I knew early on, but I just hadn't really put that label on it yet. I was always starting clubs at school, was leading student council, those sorts of things that take a bit of entrepreneurial drive, but I hadn't really defined myself as being that necessarily long term. Mm-hmm. And then when I got into Western, I got an entrance scholarship. That was the Pierre L. Morissette Entrepreneurship Scholarship. And I assumed they had the wrong person because I didn't have a company or anything. But they said, no, it's based on all this club experience and different initiatives you've started. And if you enter the entrepreneurship certificate at Ivy, then you'll get the scholarship. And we think you'd be a good fit for it. And so that was the first time that I was like, oh, maybe this is a career path, or this is something I could do. So started various businesses while I was in school, and then Bridgit has been the one that's actually taken off. So
yeah, that's awesome. So your session this morning was called your winning product playbook, and you obviously have a winning product and now two. Can you tell us a little bit about a recent win that you've had with one of your products?
So I think the biggest win recently was that we launched our second product for workforce planning, And before that, we were never really sure with the first product if we just got lucky in a way. We didn't know that the process we took was necessarily repeatable because we'd only done it once.
Sure.
So we felt like it was intuitive to go out and talk to our customers and listen to their problems and make sure you were building a solution that you weren't just in love with, but that they were in love with. And so we kind of followed all these steps that just felt natural at the time, but we didn't necessarily know if we could repeat that either in a new business or for a second product one day. And I think the fact that we went through the same research process, but we interviewed probably 10% of the people just because we already had all this context on the industry.
Sure.
So that was a lot faster. Our product and development team launched the product in half the amount of time it took for the original product, and the revenue's grown like 6 times as fast.
Wow.
And so we feel like we now can repeat this process over and over as part of Bridgit and longer term with new companies as well. And so I think that's been sort of the most rewarding product milestone that we've had over the last little while, just knowing that we can kind of keep doing it again and again.
It's repeatable, and you've proven it, and 6 times faster. Like that's those are fantastic stats. Are you pretty focused on metrics? I mean, you and Lauren, as you're growing this, I mean, you just named some awesome ones. Do you track all those kinds of things pretty ruthlessly?
So, with the new product, we really took the opportunity to make sure that we had our vision and strategy written down and making sure that we were communicating it clearly with the team, because as we were going through the development of the second product, it was unclear about how much we should lean towards one product or the other, or include both in that overall strategy. But as soon as we got that figured out, we put together the strategy, the objectives, and then have key performance indicators that all go up into the specific objectives for the company going into next year. So every team has specific KPIs that they're tracking that all, of course, lead back to the overall strategy and objectives. So that's worked really well for us.
Great.
The team really rallies around them.
People know what to focus on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone gets excited about revenue, obviously, but there's lots of other exciting usage metrics and engagement metrics that we look at as well.
Oh, fascinating. Excellent. So when you're innovating, and you talked about wondering, okay, can we really replicate this? But when you're innovating, it's rarely a straight line to success. There are often twists and turns and sometimes giant craters that people fall into. Can you share either a pivot or something that felt like a total maybe disaster at the time, but then in hindsight you go, yeah, that was a great lesson and we rebounded?
I think as we were starting to research what the second product offering would be, so we already had the field level sort of tackled with the first product, and we wanted to also have a product for the enterprise level at these construction companies to just sort of increase the deal size and more recurring revenue model. And I think one thing that was difficult for the team was the fact that these two products wouldn't actually integrate. So it was the same customer, but they were not an integrated solution, would never become an integrated solution. So that was something that I think the team and we very much thought about whether it was just the wrong decision to make, and whether we should be building an additional module on the existing product or something like that. And I think once we brought more people from the company into the customer conversations and they realized just how big the pain point that we were solving was going to be, then they got really excited about it, and we decided to just sort of take the risk and have a totally second standalone product, and they both end up referring deals back to each other, which is great. So it has been successful in the end, but it was something that when we were in it, we really couldn't figure out whether it was the wrong decision to be making for the overall product portfolio that we were building.
Okay. And have you separated out like sales people dedicated to each separate product? Have you split, org structure wise a little bit?
So the sales team is separated, but everything else is the same. And we've found that there's so many referrals going back between the two that actually creates like a really great dynamic for both products. And so that's something that we weren't necessarily expecting to happen, but it has happened. So that's been sort of an extra benefit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Awesome. So you and your co-founder have been really successful raising capital, like really successful. And I wonder if were there any extra challenges being a female founder? Do you have any thoughts either on that or just raising funding in general when it's your first maybe startup and it's a newer process for you?
Yeah, so in terms of it being, a new company, or if it's your first time fundraising, I think the biggest challenge is that you just don't have a network that's been developed. So graduate school, you maybe had part-time work or summer work, but it's not a network of venture capitalists that you've been building trust with for the last 10 years. So that was definitely the biggest thing, I think, initially. Just people didn't know if we were into this, if, limited construction experience, just because we were 21, so how many years could we possibly have been in the industry? So just things like that, I think, are really challenging for any company when it's their first time starting out. In terms of being women specifically, there are just a ton of stats around this. So only 2% of venture capital actually goes to female-led companies. There's a survey that went out the other week saying that 62% of Canadians wouldn't feel comfortable with a female in a leadership position, so as a CEO.
So depressing.
So there's still a lot of this bias that exists, and so we decided that we would always just focus on the metrics of the company and showing growth and performance, and that was something that nobody could argue with.
Yeah.
So if the numbers are good enough, then you're going to get investors, and it's too bad that you won't necessarily get the investors that are making just a complete leap of faith on the idea.
They'll miss out.
But they'll miss out.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so the partners that we have are just committed to our growth, they're committed to us. I think it's allowed us to create a very aligned board and aligned group of investors, which wouldn't necessarily be the case if we weren't forced to be so selective over who we were working with. So silver lining.
A silver lining. Yeah, it's got to change. Someday it's going to change, but it's slow. Yeah. Way too slow.
Yeah, and I love what Jody Kovitz from Move the Dial is saying about it. So just to sort of paraphrase, but just that time isn't enough, and that people really need to take action and start initiatives or make decisions differently to actually move things forward, because time going by will not solve the discrepancies. So
interesting. One of the other people that we spoke to, Felicia from Unbounce, was saying that lots of studies have come out showing that often it's even before you get to founding something, like at the first promotion, women drop out, and there are various stats showing that we got to take, to your point, an active role in making a change. So okay, good. What is the best and worst business advice you've ever received? Or you could pick one or the other.
The best advice I've ever received, and it's very simple, which I think a lot of good advice is, but was just to follow the bright spots, because there's so many priorities that you can have and that you're balancing in the company. There's lots of things going well sometimes, but there's also lots of things going poorly sometimes. So just whatever the thing is that really seems to be working, to just double down on that, either from an investment or just a time perspective or focus perspective of your company, and just follow that, as opposed to worrying about some of the different things that aren't going as well. So a simple example could even just be around like your go-to market. Maybe the outbound sales team is really performing, but then there isn't as much on inbound, or maybe it's vice versa.
Right.
But whatever is working, especially in the early days, just double down on it, focus on it, and then over time you can start to work on some of those more complex problems. But basically just going after the lowest hanging fruit is another way of putting it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay. Yeah, excellent. Can you share something with us that we wouldn't find on social media?
I love cooking. That wouldn't be on social media.
That
on
wouldn't.
my Bridgit social media.
No. What do you like to cook?
All sorts of things. I love cooking like Middle Eastern type food.
Now you're in my books.
So our awesome Lyft drivers from Lebanon, right? Originally?
Awesome,
Yeah.
One of my favorite cookbooks is called Zahav, but they also have a restaurant in Philadelphia, and that was probably the best meal I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, they make everything from scratch, like roasted lamb, all this delicious stuff. So I love cooking, and I love music also. So I play guitar a little bit. Haven't had as much time lately, but just going to concerts, discovering new bands, that sort of thing.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And is there anything you'd like to share with us or share about Bridgit that I just haven't asked you about?
No, I think just, it was an awesome conference. So for anyone thinking of, getting into the tech world or that's already in the tech world, I think it was, a great place to just meet people that we haven't seen in a while from the tech industry. So it's a great couple days. So
fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Mallorie. It's been a pleasure. And that concludes our interview. You heard it here. SaaS North is a fabulous event, fabulous conference. And thanks again to our supporters, and signing off for now.